Hi, and welcome to another Conversations with a Dog Trainer video. I call this series Conversations with a Dog Trainer because what I'm really after, instead of showing you videos of training dogs, is talking to you about topics that occur every day when I'm working with clients, or sometimes it's an email that comes in and there's just little things that sit on the brain throughout the day, and I'm like, that would be a good topic, and this would be interesting to people, and this would be useful to someone. So we're just sitting down and having a conversation, and these are thoughts that go through my brain all day long while I'm busy training dogs. So I wanted to talk to you today about how people inadvertently ruin their dogs, and it very often leads back to a couple of common patterns, couple of common threads that owners take with their dogs. And I'm going to use several examples, 3 examples to be specific. 2 of them are with clients of mine, and one was just owner and dog I saw in the street. I didn't really have much of an interaction with them. But I'd like to use these examples to illustrate, because there's probably a lot of you out there watching this that can relate to this and might find something useful to utilize right now with what's going on with your dogs, or perhaps to prevent this from happening in the future. So the first one I want to talk about is a client I trained with on several occasions, going back a couple of years now, and I recently got an email from her. And she says, all of a sudden, my dog doesn't want to go into her crate anymore. My dog is afraid of her crate. She resists going in. She looks very stressed out. And then she went on to answer a lot of her own question without realizing it in the email. I sit on the floor with her for a little while. She starts to feel better. I give her a few treats and she goes in. She's probably not scared to go in the crate. She maybe just doesn't want to go in the crate. Now, before we start jumping to conclusions, before I start, because she's sending me an email and she lives completely at the other side of the country. I'm at the eastern end, she's at the western end. I can't see the dog in action. She could send me a video, but that may not tell me the whole story. So, first thing I do is ask, has there been anything traumatic that's happened to the dog, especially centered around the crate? Because I want to rule out any possible trauma. If there's trauma, then we have to take a different approach. But no, there hasn't been. So this is a dog that would go into the crate just fine, and all of a sudden isn't going into the crate just fine. And here is the common thread we're going to see throughout all of these examples, and that you can likely find in your own dog's behavior. It starts off very small and subtle, and people ignore it. And what that means is the dog hesitates to go into the crate. Maybe we give a second and third command. Maybe the dog just wants to cuddle in your lap for a minute, and you figure, okay, I love my dog. Why wouldn't I want to sit on the floor and cuddle with my dog? What it does is it plants a seed in the dog's mind. If the dog is looking to avoid going in the crate, now we've planted a seed that there is Avenue A that we've asked for, but there's also Avenue B that's available to you, and maybe C, D, E, and F, and so forth. So as long as the dog ended up meeting what the owner wanted, they probably figure, well, it all worked out, no harm, no foul. But it left that little question mark bubble for the dog. And then the next time, the dog explores that option again. And let's assume the owner's not in a rush. Let's assume that they have a couple of minutes. And so who doesn't like to spend a few extra minutes with their dog? So little by little, this starts to develop. And then all of a sudden, now one day the owner is in a rush. And I need you to do this for me quickly. I need you to go into the crate quickly. I need you to come in from the yard quickly. We can shape this many different ways. Now all of a sudden, they go to put the dog in and the dog is very resistant. Go back to my videos where I talk about self-discovery and self-motivation and how they are the most powerful learning tools for any dog. And the dog has learned through its own discovery that if I stall, if I use certain tactics, I get paid for it. Someone would look at this and say, well, the dog is stubborn, the dog is difficult, the dog is challenging you, the dog is dominant. All of these things are flat out wrong. The dog is simply being creative and trying things, and if it works, why the hell shouldn't the dog do it? So the dog is not trying to get over on you. The dog is just exploring what's available to it. And it's up to us. It's not on the dog. It's on us. It's our obligation to outwit, outsmart the dog. I don't know if I just quoted Survivor there. To outwit or outsmart the dog. And to be aware of what are the potential pitfalls in front of me now if I allow this to happen. What are the potential pitfalls if I allow my dog up on the couch? What are they if I feed my dog from the table? What are they if I open the crate for my puppy when it's barking, on and on and on, right? In any example. So the dog now looks like it doesn't want to go into the crate, and the owner assumes that the dog has anxiety with the crate, that the dog is stressed, that the dog has separation anxiety, when maybe the dog is just like a little kid who asked for a glass of milk before bed and realized, oh wow, that bought me 10 minutes. So I had her practice with a leash, with some rewards, and just guiding the dog in. The leash wasn't there to drag the dog to the crate. The leash was there as a seat belt to prevent the accident from happening if they went off the rails. And they did this a few times and the dog went in the crate and that was it. So where was the anxiety? Where was the stress? It wasn't there. The dog just tried option B and it worked, and then the dog went with that. So it's very important to understand those seeds, once they're planted, now the dog is going to go back to them and she's going to harvest them. Okay, this is very important. This ties into a second example, again, a client of mine who I'm currently working with, and they have this cute little corgi and they walk him in a harness. And nothing wrong with the harness, that's cool. But I was explaining to her that for some instances, collar would be better. And I wanted them to have that option available so we can continue to use the harness. And she says, well, he panics when he's in a collar. And sure enough, I saw it. He panicked and he thrashed around and he wiggled out of his collar. So how does that happen? Well, the owner, like many people, when they see their dog panic, she looks like a deer in the headlights. So the dog feels a little bit of tension in the collar and he thrashes around, and like many people, the owner stops. And the dog says, this thing, it works. We just stop. I don't have to walk. I don't have to do anything. And this is a very nervous, very, very anxious dog. And so he's constantly looking for a pause button. He'd like to pause the entire world. Okay, excuse me. He'd like to pause the entire world. So anytime he can find a pause button, that suits his MO fantastically. So he thrashes around and she stops. And then we end up training together. We go to use the collar just a little bit of guidance, just doing this. And of course he thrashes around. And the owner stops, and then I coach her through it, and I have her make sure to follow through. Follow through in training is key. If we don't follow through, then the dog controls the narrative. And it's not, again, the dog trying to win, trying to be dominant, trying to get over on us, being crafty or stubborn. It's simply the dog trying something and having success with it. So we can't let dogs have success by doing the wrong things and then claim that they don't listen or that they're difficult. They know that by doing the wrong things, it's actually the right thing because they're getting paid. Right? If you're supposed to show up for work at 9 and you walk in at 11:30 with a Starbucks in your hand and the boss walks over to you and says, bonus, 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 200, 400, 500. How are they signaling to you that you're doing the wrong thing? So they should say, did you check the time? We start at 9. We'll let it slide today. Maybe if you have a super generous boss, if you're 2.5 hours late with a Starbucks, but we'll let it slide today. But tomorrow you've got to be here at 9, and don't do that ever again. And let's pretend that you don't understand, right? Because a dog doesn't understand. Just because you're talking to the dog doesn't mean it understands you. So you've got to be skilled at teaching the dog what is expected of it. And you've got to know how to guide the dog through the steps. And then you've got to help your dog rule out options. What if I try this? What if I try that? You're allowed to try everything, and it's my job. It's not your obligation. It's not your responsibility as a dog. It's my job to show you what works and what doesn't work, and it's my job to be prepared for all the little what ifs that you're going to present to me, because if you're like the average dog, you're going to present a bunch of what ifs. And then I can start to rule out options, and I start to have a reliable dog. So this corgi who thrashed around, I fully expected to see it, And I fully expected to see the owner's response. I already knew what her response would be based on her description of her dog. So I'm coaching her. I'm not concerned with the dog. The dog is secondary. His behavior is trailing hers. His behavior is just some dust in the wind. And she's really the fan that's blowing it. So if I can get her to move properly, he's going to eventually move. And at one point when he's walking with her, now we can hit that pause button. Self-motivation, self-discovery. If the dog wants things to pause and he's moving with us nice and freely, even if it's only 2 little steps with his little corgi legs, 2 little steps, then we can have a victory there. Pause, give him a pat, hug him, pick him up, do something that it's just like putting a tip in the jar. And now the dog says, oh, I see where the pause button is. You moved it. It used to be here. Now you moved the pause button to here. So it's not a dog fighting us or being challenging. It's a dog, in this case, who really is in distress as compared to the dog with the crate. This is real distress. And in order to help the dog, we have to move him past that. He's not going to voluntarily do it. You can try with a treat. I promise you with this dog, it's not going to work. The owner has tried and tried and tried. So there's nothing motivational you're going to do. You're just going to have to get him to move his legs. But as soon as he takes a couple of steps, voila, payday. Now the dog is extra motivated to start to flow with you and move with you because, hey, there's nothing to this. This dog is a prime example of someone who makes a lot out of nothing. They make a big deal out of a little thing. So we just want him to walk, and he likes to go on walks. It's not like he's afraid to go outside, afraid to go on walks. He panics when he feels the least bit of tension. If you move with us, there is no tension. Again, you can try treats. It's not going to get him to move. You can use a flexi leash to give him more time. Therefore, you can continue to walk without applying any tension. You're going to get to the end of 20 feet on that flexi, and the dog still will not have taken a step. So at some point, we've got to force the issue. And then we get the dog to take a couple of steps, and it's victory. And as soon as he saw that, changed everything. Now, we did an even bigger baby step, or technically it's a smaller baby step. We broke it down a little bit more. All we did was stand still and not move at first and just put a little bit of tension in the leash. And as soon as the dog felt this, at first he would get ready to thrash. And if he just took a beat, if he just, for half a second, right away I'm instructing the owner, release the tension in the leash, praise the dog, show the dog that this is a great response. So we would just do this. Good boy. Good boy. Good boy. Counter conditioning. Showing the dog now, this is not the big deal you believe it to be. You don't have to go to that automatic response. Okay? Our dogs have automatic responses. Think doorbell. Think when you open the fridge. Think when you go to get their food. Whatever it is that is very meaningful to your dog, boom, big response. So in this case, little bit of tension, good dog. Once we accomplished that, then it was the couple of steps and then little by little walking and walking, okay? Very, very helpful with that dog. In order for us to promote change in our dogs, we have to be willing to put them through a little bit of stress. It's insane to me as a dog trainer how people try to avoid every little potential stressful moment for their dogs. What you're doing by avoiding stress is weakening the dog. We want our dogs to learn that stress is a normal part of life and to overcome things. My dog was following me around. He was having a little bit of a puppy fit before. And I just emptied out some coffee grounds from a little bucket where I dump the espresso pucks. And he loves to sniff whatever's in my hands. He's always curious to explore things. And so he's trotting along and he's having a bit of his fit. And he goes to sniff, but at the same time he's bouncing and he bumped his nose right on it. He does one of these and he squints. So now I know I just have to hold this out for a second and let him come and explore it and realize it didn't attack you, you bumped into it. If I would have just put it up on the table and gone on to make my coffee, I might have left a little false belief in my dog's mind. And that's a good example of stress and how we can take something like that. And a lot of people would have let the dog walk away and they would have maybe chased after the dog. It's okay, it's okay, it's okay. Or they would have sat on the floor. They would have, I want my dog Self-motivation, self-discovery, overcome. Okay? Self-motivation. All living things want to live with as little stress as possible. We want to be able to push through, to feel confident and courageous, and to feel like the clouds kind of separate when we feel them forming over our head. The self-discovery in this case, that thing that you think attacked you didn't really attack you. Maybe you're a little clumsy right now because you're being silly. So come and check it out one more time and see if the belief you have holds water or not. Okay? Self-motivation, self-discovery, and then the confidence comes out. So healthy stress. The dog doesn't want to be brushed. It's afraid of the brush. The dog doesn't want to have its nails done. How many people avoid these things? I had someone bring me a dog once for training, dropped off the dog with some ear drops. They said she has an ear infection. She needs this every day for 2 weeks. I said, when are you done? They said, 2 weeks from now, because we haven't been able to start. The dog runs in the corner and shakes. Amazingly to me, the prescription was maybe a month old. So that means they sat on this for a month. They could not approach the dog. The dog would just have a meltdown. And eventually the dog became aggressive because shaking was holding the owners away. But eventually the owners were like, look, we got to get on this. Now they got in and the dog figured, okay, shaking's not doing it anymore. I got to chase them away. Self-motivation, self-discovery. The dog says, I don't want you touching my ears because they're uncomfortable. And if I shake, and even more so if I threaten you, and it was a St. Bernard, so big dog, the owners were definitely not looking to pick a fight with. Dog discovered, I can chase you away. So a little bit of healthy stress is very, very good for our dogs. And we have to understand that when our dogs present something that makes them a little bit uneasy, a little bit uncomfortable, it's really a chance for growth. What is it you want to end up with? What is the quality of life you want for your dog and for yourself with your dog? Do you want to keep making both of your worlds smaller and smaller? Because that's what will happen if you start avoiding everything that stresses out your dogs. This wasn't on my agenda for today, but very quickly, I did a consult this morning with a young couple with a poodle. And the dog, it couldn't be sweeter. Okay, her name is Tilly. I adore Tilly. I fell in love with her as soon as they brought her in. She's happy as can be. She does that little up on her hind two legs and this, and she just wants to interact, and she's free and social and open with the world. And they said, we can't touch her paws. She bites. And we can't move her if she's sleeping or touch her. And we can't touch her bum. So obviously we need to be able to touch our dog's paws. And we need to be able to brush our dogs, and we need to be able to approach our dogs if they're sleeping, maybe move them, and certainly brush and touch the bum and clean them up and all that stuff, right? Especially with a poodle, that type of coat. So I start to interact with Tilly, and I can see she's just very easy, very, very sweet, very happy. She took to me right away. And when I went to touch her paws, I could see the body language shift a little bit. She wasn't as free and easy, but she was definitely tolerant, like A+ for being tolerant. She was showing me that it wasn't her favorite thing for us to be doing, but she went with it. And then I showed the owners how easy it was to reshape for the dog. Again, that pause button. Maybe there was a traumatic event for her. They said that when they got her, that she was clipped really, really close to the paws and the bum. So maybe there was a real trauma to the dog where she was just nicked by the clipper a little bit, or maybe it was just the perception of this is an unpleasant thing for me. Maybe the groomer had to hold the paw a little long or a little tight, or who knows what occurred. But in Tilly's mind, this is real. So I'm touching her, and I know it's down near the paw that is the most irritating. So I'm soft entry now. I'm touching up here. So if this is 10 on 10, I'm going for the 3 on 10 at first, and I'm massaging my way in. I eventually get down here, and she gives me a growl. I let go. I hear you, Tilly, loud and clear. You don't like this. All right. And we spend a little more time together. I was with them for maybe about an hour. So over the course of an hour, I do this a few times, and eventually I'm holding the paw, and she's tolerating it now. No more growl. The second the dog tolerates it, I say, okay, and I let go. I'm flipping it around. You don't have to tell me to stop. I'm going to show you I'll stop. This isn't going to last for very long. Boom, done. Boom, done. Same thing we did with the corgi with that light little bit of tension. Just give me a little bit. Let the door just open a little bit, and then I can just kick it wide open, but the dog won't view it as me kicking it open. The dog will be like, yes, come in, because I've shown the dog how to win. So, Tilly, fantastic dog. And again, when the dog does this or growls and we come to a stop, what are the seeds that are being planted? I found the pause button. Self-motivation, self-discovery. The dog is motivated to have this come to an end because maybe something unpleasant is going to happen. In her mind, it might lead to that eventual reality of something unpleasant happening. By not continuing to push through, the dog now is going to live with that false belief. I saved myself. I still have a paw and I'm still injury-free because I growled, I snapped, or I pulled my paw away and ran and hid under the furniture, or however she resolves it. By holding the paw and not allowing that to work, and then me releasing it, the dog learns a new reality. I didn't need to do anything. It all worked out. It just works out. This is not, I was being silly. I was making a big deal out of nothing. Okay? So we plant seeds. So many myths and misconceptions in dog training, and I often wonder where they originate from. Probably the most common one that I hear, and I bet if there's any trainers watching this, or if you have a dog trainer, ask them how many people ask them or suggest to them that they believe their dog will grow out of something, or at least question if the dog will grow out of something. And nothing could be further from the truth. Dogs grow into behaviors, meaning if the dog is doing something and achieving some level of success, achieving some kind of desirable outcome from whatever it is they're doing today, then a week from now, that behavior is going to have set in even more, and a month from now, even more, and a year from now, it's automatic. I was at a client's house once where I had trained their golden retriever maybe a decade prior, and I was back to help them with their Labrador retriever. And now the golden is an old dog, and I'm so happy to see her. Her name was Murphy, and I hadn't seen Murphy in a long time. And so she runs over and she greets me, and then we're busy working with the lab, and we're in the kitchen for a little while, and Murphy is standing, and let's say this is a cookie jar on the kitchen counter. I hope this is in frame. Murphy is staring, but I mean staring with her soul into the cookie jar. And not moving, not blinking, not like a statue of a dog staring at the cookie jar. And I asked the owners, how long will she do this for? And they say, she'll do it until you give her a cookie. I said, so half hour? Yeah. Hour? Yeah. The whole morning? Sure. All day? How do you think it happens? The dog was staring at the cookie jar one day. Probably the owners were doing something near the jar on the counter, and the dog figured, well, hopefully they'll move over to this and all. However it happened, it happened. And the dog said, wow, staring at the cookie jar brings the cookies to me. And then eventually, of course, she's a cute dog. She's a very sweet dog. And she's staring at the jar, and they're like, oh, she must want a cookie. We'll give her a cookie. And eventually the belief system is so strong in the dog. Self-motivation, self-discovery. Dog's motivated to have that cookie, and the dog discovers if I stare at it long enough, it pays. So think of the growing out of it. Long story short with Murphy, I asked them if they would humor me and let her stare at it for as long as I was there, because I wanted to see how long she would last. We went in and out of the house a couple of times with the other dog. I never heard Murphy take a step, so I don't believe she walked away from the jar even while we were out. Maybe she did, but I didn't hear her move when we were coming back in. She was in that exact same spot. They gave her a cookie at the end. She still hung around. They gave her a second one, and then she walked off. So that's an extreme example, but this is a very good way to paint how a dog grows into something. So you can probably look at a behavior or a series of behaviors in your own dog, and maybe trace back to the genesis of where it started from, or at least see where it started to take more and more and more shape. Okay? I remember my old bulldog cow. She would paw at a dish. If she wanted food, she pawed at the food dish. If she wanted fresh water, she pawed at the water dish. She was very clear and very specific. We thought it was cute, and so we humored it, and boom, there you go. I mean, if it wasn't mealtime, we're not giving her an extra meal. But why not? Why not give her some fresh water? Why not acknowledge this cute little thing that my dog did haphazardly one day? Now, if we wouldn't have paid for it, maybe the dog would have done it 2 more times, 8 more times, 15 more times, which I really doubt, but let's pretend. At some point, the dog says, what's the point? Why bother? I'll try door B, door C, door D. So this is how dogs grow into things, and you can also flip that on its head and help a dog grow out of something by not allowing the dog to find value or reward in it. Think of separation anxiety, and the dog is thrilled to see you come home. And what do most people do? They fuss over the dog. Of course, now the dog grows further and further into the problem. So dogs don't outgrow things on their own. It requires some thought, some intervention, some planning, some knowledge of how a dog's mind works and how their belief systems develop. Okay? And the last example I'm going to give you today is one where I had nothing to do with this dog or owner. They're just a pair that my family and I passed on the street, and it was really, really heartbreaking to see. It was an old lady with her dog, and the dog was so unbelievably needy. There was a street fair where the streets get closed down in the summertime, so it's just pedestrians, and we were out just having a great day, walking around, ice cream, coffee, enjoying people playing music outdoors. It was really great. And you see in the midst of all this sea of activity of people and kids on scooters and just action, 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 right in the middle, the eye of the storm, this cute little spaniel with this older lady. And the spaniel is screaming and barking at any and everyone walking by. And the lady is just like, please pet my dog. Please put this dog out of her misery. What do you think happens? Where's the belief system now? The dog says, this is how I get attention from the world around me. It would have been very easy had this person worked with a trainer early on to just teach the dog to sit patiently and quietly. Think back to the corgi where he would panic at the feeling of a collar. And we just taught him that just allow us to do this to your collar. Okay, I don't know that the camera will pick up this level of subtlety, but the corgi certainly could. So just allow us to do this little bit to your collar and you win. The sensation in the collar goes away. Imagine now with this spaniel, just sit. Just sit for 1 second, 2 seconds. Eventually 2 becomes 5, 5 becomes 10. And we're going to come and pet you. What the dog wanted in this case is the same thing that we want to give the dog, whether it be the owner or the people walking by. She's a very cute little dog. Most people are going to want to pet the dog, especially when you're out on a nice summer day and you got the streets blocked off to motorists and you can move about freely and you see this cute little dog and you just walk by and oh, what a cute dog. But now the reverse is happening where the dog is screaming, the dog is carrying on. The owner is pleading with any and everyone to pet the dog because she just wants the screaming to stop. The owner is looking for the pause button now. You see how that works? The owner, knowingly or not, is feeding the behavior, and even if it's being done knowingly, it's being done because the owner is in a state of distress. I see this, and we didn't really interact, I just kind of observed, and to me it's just a little slice of life, and of course doing what I do for a living for the last 30 years, I see this and I'm transfixed, I'm mesmerized by this. And I know exactly how it started, and I can see the whole movie unraveling in my mind. And it's really, really sad because eventually the dog gets locked in. And remember what I said earlier where you get painted back into a corner. And this would have been a very easy thing to resolve if the owner understood it early on, whether she worked with a trainer, whether she found some information online in a book. Hopefully you get the right information because that's a whole other topic to itself. But it would have been a very easy thing to work with. But now we have a dog who's very, very fragile, who's very emotionally raw. Imagine how charged up the dog is getting ready to go out for a walk. The minute the owner grabs the leash, gets her keys, gets a poop bag, whatever it is that the dog says, wow, that means we're about to do this. Look at how emotional the dog gets. Think of how volatile the dog is. Think of how vulnerable the owner and the dog team are. And then they're in the middle of all this activity, and it's like watching, to me anyways, a bunch of people at a pool party, and people are playing water polo, and someone's got a glass of champagne in the pool, and people are laughing and splashing and having fun, and the weather is great. And right in the middle of everything, someone's drowning, just drowning. And it's happening in slow motion. That's how I see that owner and dog. And so all of these things trace back to the original point of the video today, which is when things start to go the wrong way, learn to identify the early signs. Don't expect that it's going to correct itself. Don't expect that it's going to magically get better by itself. And know that you need to intervene and reshape your dog's view of things. Okay, I gave you several examples today. I started out with 3, but we really did 4 because I even talked about Tilly, who was a consult from early this morning. I started training dogs early this morning. I think it's after 10 o'clock right now. I had to actually stop and switch cameras because the first one was overheating and it cut out in the middle of part of what I was saying. So yeah, I'm going way back now in the memory banks because today, early morning is already a blur. But you've got several examples and there's a commonality, there's a common thread through all of them. There's a link, which is initially the dog starts to go off the rails. It might be a dog that was trained to do something that falters and we let it slide because we think nothing of it, or we think it's not too meaningful in the moment, or maybe it doesn't inconvenience us right now because we're really good at ignoring things that don't inconvenience us in the moment. We figure not a big deal right now, or we kind of wait till it smacks us in the face. But you've got to be proactive with your dog's behavior. So the common thread is when the dog starts going this way, think of it like a baby tree you've planted and it's starting to bend. And we figure it's just going to do this. No, over time it's going to be more and more like this. And so you see those baby trees where people will put a stick or a post or something, and then they'll put some jute around it to protect the tree, and they'll put some rope, and the rope is there to just help it stand upright. And that's what we have to do as trainers and as dog owners to help our dogs stay on path. Don't look to your dog to take care of things. You need to set the tone of being a leader and being someone your dog can count on so that the dog knows, okay, this is the person I follow. This is the recipe I follow. This is what brings me success. This is what brings me joy. This is what brings me comfort on a daily basis. So I hope you found today's video useful. Once again, this has been Conversations with a Dog Trainer, where we just sit and chat about topics that are relevant to dog owners and dog trainers all around the world. I'll see you in the next video.